Hi everyone, Daljeet Peterson here from astrolab21.com, and welcome back to our ongoing series, Blueprint of the Soul, where we're learning to become the architect of our own destiny by learning how to read our astrological birth chart. Now, here we are, we're 3 episodes in, and I'm really excited about this episode because we're really going to start to see how this method, this fundamental approach that we're taking is really going to start to pay off as we start to explore the signs of the zodiac here in episode 3. Now, if you haven't watched the first 2 episodes, I strongly recommend going back and watching those first because we really are going in a sequential order here. These series, they are building one upon the other. We're building this sort of foundational understanding so that we can evolve and expand our appreciation and approach. So I'm going to put links to both of those 2 videos in the description below. So if you haven't, give those a spin first and then come back to this, and you'll really get, I think, a lot more out of this video having gone through the first 2. Now, before we dive into episode 3, let's just do a quick review about some of the things that we already talked about in the first 2 episodes to sort of give us caught up here. We started in the first episode by saying, there's basically 5 principles. I call these the Big Five of Astrology. These are the 5 key components to understanding astrology and learning how to read your birth chart. And those are the elements, the signs, the houses, the planets, and the aspects. And we went on to define each of these 5 principles in terms of their energy approach. Remember, we talked about taking an energy approach to astrology from the perspective that what we've learned is that everything is energy, and how we use our energy will determine how we experience our lives. So we endeavored to define these 5 principles in terms of energy and experience, right? And we kind of reduced each one down to a single key word, where we talked about the elements being the substance of experience, the signs representing the qualities of our experience, the houses are going to represent the fields of experience, the planets, the functions of our experience, and the aspects, the dynamics of the experience. And in the second episode, we dove into the first of the 5 principles. We talked about the elements. And we showed how there are actually 4 elements, these 4 archetypal or metaphysical elements, if you will, which are fire, earth, air, and water. And we sort of discussed how everything in manifest creation is said to be some expression of some unique combination of these 4 elements, that these are sort of these archetypal entities, if you will, through which everything in manifest creation is formed and formed of, right? And we introduced the concept of polarity along with the elements because we demonstrated how, traditionally the 4 elements are divided into 2 complementary pairs of elements, where fire and air represent the masculine or yang side of the polarity, while earth and water represent the feminine or yin side of the polarity. And we explored the concept of polarity through sort of meditating on this wonderfully elegant Taoist or Chinese symbol of the yin-yang, right? Which is showing us something incredibly profound in this symbol, which is that while we do have polar opposites and we live in this world of the laws of polarity, of duality, we have masculine and feminine, we have day and night, we have good and bad, right? But what it's showing us is that we can't have one without the other. They need each other in a coexistence, right? In this continual ebb and flow, and how the essence of one is the essence of the other, right? So there is no masculine without feminine. We're integrating these polarities, and hopefully in our consciousness we can hold the possibility of an integration of them. We can see that they're both necessary in order for a completion, in order for a whole expression. And this really helps us to understand how the elements themselves interact, right? Because we have two elements that tend to be complementary, and then we showed how they could also be incompatible, right? Because we really dove in and defined each of these elements and created these sort of constellation of qualities around each one, right? And in this grid format, we can see how we paired, on the left side we have fire and air, the masculine elements, and on the right side we have earth and water, which are the feminine elements, right? And so these complement each other, right? Water feeds earth, air feeds fire. They're a complementary element because they're both of either masculine or feminine polarity. And we also showed how, going across here, we have incompatible elements, right? Fire scorches earth, right? Air can freeze water. Or on the diagonal, right? Water puts out fire, right? Earth smothers air. So elements can either combine in complementary or incompatible ways, and depending on the polarity, right? So the elements along with polarity gives us a really deep understanding of what we're dealing with at an elemental level. And this is really going to help us and really start to pay dividends now as we pivot to examining the 12 signs of the zodiac. Because what we're going to see here is that they literally emerge from the elements. If we see how, and we talked a little bit about how each of the 4 elements represents 3 zodiac signs each. And we have the glyphs here that are sort of hidden in a way, or contained within these 4 elements. And what we're going to demonstrate today is how these zodiac signs literally emerge from the elemental level. The elements are the background information from which they're the material, they're the substance, right? The energy substance that we use to build and make the signs of the zodiac. So that's what we're going to explore in this episode as we start to explore the 12 signs of the zodiac. Okay, so now we're in some more familiar, astrological territory. Most of us are more familiar with the idea of the 12 signs of the zodiac. But because we've started on this elemental level, we're really going to get a much deeper and more profound understanding of how the 12 signs of the zodiac come into existence for us because we understand the elements. And much like when we talked about the elements, we needed to introduce the concept of polarity to really, truly understand how the elements work. There's one more concept that we need to bring into the fold here as we explore the signs that's really going to help us get a much deeper appreciation. So here we have, we've got, as we said, the 4 elements: fire, earth, air, and water. These 4 elements express themselves through 3 unique modalities. And this is the new concept I want to introduce, this idea of modalities. And there are 3 of them, namely cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And what we need to understand here is that each of the 4 elements expresses itself or can express itself through one of these 3 modes. And, in terms of our language that we're using, where we're talking about the elements being the energy substance of our experience, in these terms, we can think of the modes as being vibrational patterns, unique patterns of vibration through which the substance energy of the elements manifests, right? So we could say that fire can manifest itself through the vibrational energy of cardinal, or fixed, or mutable. Likewise, earth and air and water. Each of the 4 elements expresses itself through the 3 modes. So let's unpack the idea of modalities a little more, and let's really see if we can formulate a very basic definition of what each of these modalities means and signifies in terms of this energy or vibrational pattern. And just looking at the words themselves, we sort of can start to get an idea of what each one of these modes these modalities is all about, right? I mean, cardinal as a word, we think of cardinal, you think of the cardinal directions, right? This is about primary or first or of significance or importance, right? The idea of the cardinals in the hierarchy of the church, right? They're important figures, cardinal. Whereas fixed, well, it seems to denote something just that, something that is fixed or set in its ways, something that is solid, something that has a conservative or an energy of conservation, that wants to preserve, that wants to retain, that wants to solidify in some ways. And then mutable is just that, something that wants to mutate, something that wants to change, evolve the energy. And that's exactly what these three modal energies are all about. So we can define cardinal energy as being energy that moves from the center outward in a definite direction, right? And as this symbol represents, these are the four cardinal directions, right? This is energy moving from the center and outward in a very definite direction. It has initiatory energy. It has purpose. It has directionality. It wants to express itself. It wants to put things out in the world. It's very expressive. What this represents is a sense of centrifugal force, right? This is energy that moves from the center outward. And we can contrast that somewhat with the notion of the fixed modality. And in this symbol, what we see is the fixed energy represents energy that moves inward towards a center, right? This is more of a centripetal force, right? This is a consolidating force. This is energy that wants to preserve, that wants to conserve, that wants to contain, that's pulling it in. And in a way, we have to think of these modes as this is a closed loop in a way. This is a three-step process. So essentially what the cardinal mode produces and puts out in the world, the fixed mode then says, hey, that's good stuff. We can use that. Let's consolidate that. Let's gather that energy that the cardinal mode is throwing out there, and let's contain it. Let's make it more powerful. Let's use it in a way that we can rely on, that we can depend on, that we can hold in. Then you get to the third modality, which is mutable, which is represented more by a spiraling type of energy, right? The mutable mode wants to take what has been now fixed and consolidated and says, yeah, that's great, but now maybe we can improve upon it. Maybe we need to change it. Maybe we need to modify it and mutate it in some way so that something new can be made from it, right? So that's what the mutable mode is all about. It wants to change. It wants to mutate. It wants to distribute. It wants to share these ideas. And so what it's trying to do is take what's been fixed, mutate it so that it becomes the raw material for the next cycle of cardinal to begin. And then cardinal then takes that mutated energy and puts it out there as something new, and the cycle begins again. So we can look at these modes as this sort of three-stroke cycle, this closed loop. And as we're going to see a little later on in the video, what's encoded in the modalities is actually the very seasons of nature. The 4 seasons follow this three-stroke or modal pattern. So modes, 3 modes. And now this is really important because when we combine the modes with the elements, we're going to see something very profound and very powerful develop here in terms of the dynamics at play, in terms of how the 12 signs of the zodiac come into existence. So here we have the 4 elements, and we talked about how each of the 4 elements can express itself through one of these 3 modes, right? Fire can express itself as either cardinal, fixed, or mutable. Likewise, earth and air and water. And what we see is when you have these 4 elements and these 3 modal possibilities, well, this creates a grid here, as you can see, of 12 possible outcomes. And what we have here is basically the elemental foundation of how the 12 signs of the zodiac are created, because this is sort of the underpinnings of the zodiac itself, right? We can see underneath the hood, if you will, the elements expressing in 3 different modes, gives us 12 signs of the zodiac. We have 3 fire signs, right? Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, represented by the 3 modes, right? So that Aries is the cardinal fire, Leo is fixed fire, Sagittarius, mutable fire. So hopefully you're seeing there the fruits of our labor by really doing that legwork of understanding things from an elemental perspective. We have a deep level of understanding now of how the signs work. Without ever discussing any of the signs individually, we're seeing this sort of this undergirding, if you will, of how the signs themselves are actually built. They're built on this elemental foundation. So now we're ready to really explore the signs of the zodiac. And of course, we always talk about the zodiac in terms of a wheel, right? And when we see a birth chart, it's always in this wheel or in this circular pattern or formation. So now we're going to take these elemental building blocks that we've created here, and we're going to build the wheel of the zodiac. So just to recap, what do we have? We have 2 polarities, we have 3 modalities, and 4 elements, right? And I said back in episode 2, right? These are the ABCs, but they're not the 1, 2, 3s, right? They're the 2, 3, 4s. 2 polarities, 3 modalities, 4 elements. And with these fundamental building blocks, we are going to create the 12 signs of the zodiac. Now, in order to start building our wheel of the zodiac, we start with probably the most simple, yet maybe one of the most profound symbols in all of our human symbolic language. You know, the perfect circle, right? The circle of life, the circle of time, the shape of the sun as it arcs across the sky, right? The shape of the full moon. It's a very rich and profound symbol. And it's the basis for the wheel of the zodiac. Now, as we start to learn to think in terms of the wheel of the zodiac, we have to start to approach the zodiac in a very specific way. Because unlike, say, a clock, which starts at the top at the 12 o'clock position and works its way clockwise around the circle, the zodiac wheel works a little differently. The zodiac starts to the left at the 9 o'clock position and works its way counterclockwise around the circle. So we need to begin to orient ourselves in this rather specific way when we start to learn to see the wheel of the zodiac. So let's do that. If we draw a line straight over to that 9 o'clock position to the left here on our wheel and make that our starting or our first position, right? And I've sort of in the background here created the wheel of the zodiac that we're going to build here, right? So how do we construct this wheel? Well, we start at this 9 o'clock position, and we want to work our way counterclockwise around this circle, and we want to create 12 equal slices or wedges, like we're cutting up a pie into 12 equal slices, right? And each of these wedges represents one of the 12 signs of the zodiac. And this is how we build the wheel of the zodiac. So we start with the first position, and that becomes the first sign, which is Aries, right? Which is symbolized by the ram. And this is the glyph for Aries. And I want you guys to start to really absorb these glyphs, these symbols, because as I said, astrology is that symbolic language. And there's a lot of information encoded in these symbols once we learn to read them. They start to give us a depth of meaning that a word can't quite capture, right? It's like a picture is worth 1,000 words. These glyphs contain so much more in just that single representation. So this is the glyph for Aries, the ram, right? And then we're going to work our way around the circle counterclockwise. And so the second sign is Taurus, whose symbol is the bull. The third sign is Gemini, whose symbol is the twins. The fourth sign is Cancer, whose symbol is the crab. And this glyph represents a crab. Okay, this isn't a symbol of some kinky sexual position. That actually is supposed to be representative of a crab. And we keep working our way around. The fifth sign is Leo, the lion. The 6th sign is Virgo, the Virgin. The 7th sign is Libra, which is the scales. The 8th sign is Scorpio, which is the scorpion. The 9th sign is Sagittarius, which is the archer. The 10th sign is Capricorn, the goat. The 11th sign, Aquarius, the water bearer. And the 12th sign is Pisces, which is the 2 fishes. So there we have it. We have built the wheel of the zodiac. This is the fundamental first step we need to take in understanding and orienting ourselves to the wheel of the zodiac in a very specific way. This is what we would call the natural zodiac. So now with that foundation in place, we're going to start to put into practice what we've learned in these previous episodes with the elements and the polarities, and add in our latest concept, the idea of the modes, and we're really going to start to get a real firm and fundamental understanding about what these zodiac signs represent and how they're constructed, how they're built from a fundamental or foundational level. So going back to our wheel here, let's start now by adding what we've learned about the elements, right? We know that there are 4 elements and they work in a cycle. And so if we start with the first sign, Aries, we know that Aries is a fire sign. And then the second sign, Taurus, is an earth sign. The third sign, Gemini, is an air sign. And the fourth sign of Cancer is a water sign. First cycle of elements. And then that cycle repeats another time as we work our way around the wheel. So the 5th sign, Leo, is a fire sign. We have Virgo, which is an earth sign, Libra, an air sign, and then Scorpio, a water sign. And then we have one more cycle of elements, right? So we have Sagittarius, fire, we have Capricorn, earth, we have Aquarius, air, and we have Pisces, water. So now we're starting to see how the elements are interacting, right? And what did we talk about when we talked about complementary pairs of elements? Remember we said fire and air complement each other. So we notice with this wheel configuration, any 2 signs that are exactly opposite, say here where you have Aries is exactly opposite of Libra. They're complementary pairs or oppositional pairs as a sign group, right? Well, Aries fire complements Libra air. Likewise, if we looked at the second group here, if we looked at Taurus, we go opposite Taurus, we get Scorpio, right? Well, Taurus earth complements Scorpio water. They are complementary elemental pairs. Now, because we know now the element of every sign, we also know the polarity of every sign, because we know that fire is always going to be masculine or yang. We know that earth is always feminine or yin. We know that air is masculine or yang, and that water is always feminine or yin. And so now we have another pattern that is emerging in our zodiac wheel. This time an alternating current of polarities, of masculine and feminine. So we can continue around the wheel, right? We have Leo fire, which is masculine, and then we have an earth sign is feminine, an air sign is masculine, a water, which is feminine, and we go around until we have another complete rotation around the wheel. And again, this reinforces something very profound about our complementary pairs of signs, which have complementary elements. Complementary elements always are of the same polarity. So this adds to that sort of harmonizing effect when you consider, for instance, Aries fire and Libra air as being complementary pairs. Well, one of the reasons that opposites attract is because they're of the same polarity. They're both of this yang polarity. Likewise, Taurus and Scorpio as earth and water pair are both going to be of the yin or feminine polarity. Now we add our latest piece of the puzzle, which is the modalities, which also follow a particular pattern, as we're going to see. So again, we always are going to start with Aries, the first sign here. Well, we know that Aries is a cardinal sign, which is followed by Taurus, which is a fixed sign, and Gemini, which is a mutable sign. And then that pattern will repeat again, where we get Cancer cardinal, we get Leo fixed, and we get Virgo mutable. And it repeats one more time with Libra cardinal, Scorpio fixed, Sagittarius mutable. And then a fourth time, right? So we have Capricorn cardinal, we have Aquarius fixed, and we have Pisces mutable. And now we have created a very profound undergirding to how these signs are constructed. When we consider from the perspective of the element, of the mode, and of the polarity, we learn something really specific about all of these signs of the zodiac, right? So what do we have here? We have, if we pull it away, we can see, oh, well, this is what's under the hood. And this is why I wanted us to start with the elements first, because we're literally seeing under the hood of the wheel of the zodiac. And once we know this information, we start to see these invisible factors, these containers, these functions as informing our understanding of what all of these signs of the zodiac really represent, right? So what do we have? We have 3 groups of 4 elements each, right? We have the first group of earth, air, fire, and water, second group, third group, right? And then we have 4 groups of 3 modes each. We have the first group of cardinal, fixed, mutable, a second, a third, and a fourth. And there's something very profound about how the modes work. As I said earlier, this is giving us the seasons of the year, right? Because the seasons, right? Aries, the first degree of Aries is the first day of spring. It's a cardinal sign. It begins, it initiates, right? Cardinal, a new season. It's the beginning of spring. And then in the middle of spring, we have a fixed sign, Taurus. So what was initiated in spring becomes fixed. It's the peak of the spring season in Taurus. Everything is blooming and blossoming and starting to grow, right? And then you get the third month of spring, which is the Gemini season, right? Which is mutable. So it sort of mutates that spring energy, and we start to get a sense of summer is coming, right? The days are getting a little longer, they're getting warmer, and Gemini mutates the spring energy and prepares it for the next cycle or the next season, which begins with Cancer, right? The first day of Cancer is the summer solstice. It's the longest day of the year. And so it initiates cardinal, it initiates a new season. Summer begins. And again, in Leo season, in the middle of summer, it's the hottest, the dog days of summer are the Leo season, right? It fixes that summer energy. And then we move into the third phase of summer, which is Virgo season. And we start to mutate summer, right? The days are getting a little shorter, the nights are getting cooler, right? We might get a first hint of fall in the air. So that mutable Virgo season prepares us for the next cycle to begin, which it does with Libra, right? The fall equinox. And now we initiate fall, and then fall gets fixed again in Scorpio, and then fall mutates under the influence of Sagittarius. And so we might start to get the first frost or the first dusting of snow on the ground. So this mutable sign is preparing us for the next season of winter, which then initiates again under the cardinal influence of Capricorn, which is the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. And then we move through winter season, which gets fixed in the Aquarius, which is often the coldest days of the year occur under Aquarius season. And then in Pisces season, winter starts to mutate again. We start to get a thaw. The days start to get longer, right? We get a sense that, oh, spring is in the air, spring is coming. So it mutates into cardinal Aries, and then spring starts and the cycle starts again. So what the zodiac encodes for us is this very profound, cyclical, seasonal nature. If we learn to understand cardinal, fixed, and mutable, we understand the seasonal encoding within the zodiac itself. and then we can add the elemental factor, we can add the polarity factor, and we're really starting now to get something very profound. So that's it. We've built the basic wheel of the zodiac, and we've built it from the ground up using elements, using polarities, and using modalities in order to show the sort of invisible components with which these 12 signs of the zodiac are being constructed, are being informed, the energy that's being expressed through these qualities, right? We're getting a much deeper understanding. So now I want to break out of the wheel that we just created, and I want to look at the 12 signs of the zodiac in a certain way in terms of the element and the modality that's going to show us something very interesting, a pattern that develops in terms of how these 12 signs work and interact. So going back, let's go back. We talked about how we have the elements, right? And then we have the 4 elements. We have fire, and we have 3 fire signs each. We have Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius making up the fire signs. We have 3 earth signs, which are Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. We have 3 air signs, which are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And we have 3 water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. So we have this sort of real elegant grid of, 3 signs of 4 elements each. Now, we could also build this grid in terms of the modalities, right? So we could look at the cardinal signs, and there will be 4 cardinal signs, which will be Aries, Capricorn, Libra, and Cancer. We're going to get 4 fixed signs, which are Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, and Scorpio. And we have 4 mutable signs, Sagittarius, Virgo, Gemini, and Pisces, which is another elegant, 4x3 grid. But what we can see here is if we consider that in the vertical column we have the elements, fire, earth, air, and water. And in this horizontal column we have the modalities, right? Cardinal, fixed, and mutable. We see something very interesting that develops within these 12 signs of the zodiac, right? Well, we could have 4 cardinal signs, or we can have 3 fire signs, but we can only have 1 sign that is both cardinal and fire. That's Aries, right? And likewise, right, we could say, okay, yeah, we have 3 earth signs and we have 4 fixed signs, but only 1 sign is both fixed and earth. That's Taurus. Likewise, each one of the signs of the zodiac represents one unique combination of these 2 factors that makes it special, that gives it its unique character. So while all the fire signs are going to have something in common, they are also going to set themselves apart by nature of their modality, their mode. Likewise, while all of the cardinal signs are going to have something in common, they're all going to partake of that cardinal energy, they're each going to be different in terms of their element. They're going to express themselves in a different elemental way. All right, so it's really all starting to come together a little bit, isn't it? Now that we see how the elements make up the sort of fundamental framework of how the 12 signs of the zodiac work, we're really getting something really profound and really useful. And we're learning to speak this language of astrology. And we're almost getting like a secret code to how astrology works, right? Because now if I say to you, fixed air, you're going to know I'm talking about Aquarius, right? Because only Aquarius can be fixed air. And we already know something really deeply profound about Aquarius, that it is air, its element is of the intellectual, the mental mode, and then it's fixed, that it wants to take that intellectual energy and it wants to consolidate it, it wants to make it more powerful, it wants to contain it, right? Similarly, if I say to you, mutable water, you know I'm talking about Pisces, right? And so we know what water is, that emotional sensibility. It's feminine, it's receptive, it wants to take it in, it wants to receive. And not only is it water, but it's mutable water, right? It wants to share, it wants to engage, it wants to transmute and mutate and evolve the emotional energy. It's the most highly evolved of the water signs. So we are really starting to understand the wheel of the zodiac in a very, I keep saying profound, but I think it is. It's simple, it's elegant in its simplicity, and it's really powerful. It's really profound. That's why the ancients referred to the zodiac itself as the soul of nature, right? They really could see how everything in nature gets expressed through these 12 signs, these 12 qualities, which are themselves expressions of the 4 elements coming through and expressing themselves in 3 different vibrational patterns of these modalities, which mimics the cycle of the seasons, right? So we are really getting a really useful paradigm here for how to understand nature, for how to understand the human personality, that I think is going to serve us really well. So I hope you're seeing the value of that, and I hope you're tracking along with this. I understand there's a lot of information that I'm presenting here, and again, don't feel like you have to learn it all at once. And if some of it isn't landing, don't worry, stay with it. We're going to keep growing and expanding our repertoire and our language, and as we get deeper into the series, hopefully this stuff is going to start to become second nature to you, because we're doing it in this sort of building block elemental way. So again, hope you're liking this. Hopefully you're getting something out of it. If you are enjoying the series, I would appreciate if you would, like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell as well so that you know when the next episode in the series comes out. I'm going to try to get these out in short time. I'll try to get maybe a whole group so that we have a basis, a foundation for which to keep exploring this amazing art and science of astrology. All right, till next time. We'll see you then. All right, Sat Nam, everyone.